Hi, I'm Bonnie Ruszczyk. I am a marketing consultant with BBR Companies, where I provide strategic marketing guidance, project management, and I often serve as an outsourced marketing director for professional services firms that don't really need that resource full time. I am also co-owner of Rally Rounds mastermind groups, which provides support, ideas, and accountability for accounting growth professionals. And finally, I am a Cornell certified DEI consultant and owner of the Accounting Move Project, the only annual benchmarking and research advocacy report that equips accounting firms to detect, develop, and drive competitive advantage from diversity initiatives and trends. So I do a lot of things. Hopefully I do some of them reasonably well. So I was asked today to talk about inclusion, the I in the acronym DEI. And while it may come last in the acronym, I would argue that it really needs to come first in the process of workplace change. All too often, companies will start recruiting and hiring a more diverse range of candidates without addressing their work culture first. As these new employees come on board and realize the culture at the company is nowhere near as inclusive as they expected, they move on to better jobs, understandably. When this happens, the company will frequently say, well, we tried to hire more women or people of color or etc. But they just don't stay. Blaming the employees rather than looking inward to determine why they jumped ship. This, along with myriad other reasons, is why creating an inclusive work culture is important for all companies. But before I discuss how to start shifting your culture to be more inclusive, I want to clearly define what inclusive means by using this graphic. So inclusion is often confused with a lot of other things that aren't really true inclusion. So on the far other end of the spectrum is exclusion. That, of course, is where there is the in-group and then there is the out-group. And the out-group is clearly kept outside of the circle as used here. Segregation is where those in the out group form their own little group, yet it is still very much outside of the in group, and they are kept separate and treated very differently. Integration is where that group, that out group, is no longer completely outside of the in group. They are allowed inside the circle, but yet they are still kept separate from those that are considered part of the in group. They're allowed to function internally, but they really aren't included. Assimilation is where, yes, those in the out group are now part of the in group, but only because they now act or look or function or have become just like those in the in group. This is often what happens, and you hear story after story of, people will talk about how they were kind of forced to assimilate into a group, or had to change maybe their appearance or change how they speak or how they act in some way to be accepted in a workplace. Where true inclusion is where people can be themselves. They can share stories about their families. They are not ostracized for maybe growing up in a poor community or being gay in a largely straight workplace, or being, different ethnicity than the majority. They can truly be included and considered equal and appreciated for what they bring to the table, and feel like they belong in that group at work. Getting to true inclusivity takes work. It is not a switch that you flip on and suddenly everything is great. I'm going to talk about 4 initial steps that companies should take in this journey toward working to be more inclusive. So the first is to make sure that you're ready to make the necessary changes and committed to inclusion, even if it gets difficult or uncomfortable. It is easy to write a DEI policy, put it on your website, and say you want to be more inclusive. But in practice, it does take a lot of work. There will be people who will think the whole thing is silly or woke nonsense. Too often, companies of all sizes say they want to create a more diverse and inclusive environment. They establish a committee, they write a policy for the website, then don't know where to go from there, and everything comes to a screeching halt. Our biases are built on generations of individual and systemic practices, stereotypes, and beliefs that don't go away overnight. So this transition will be gradual and lead to some uncomfortable conversations and realizations about ourselves as well as our company. So power dynamics that have been in place for years will often need to break down. And those that have had traditional upper hand power may find that they have to work harder to succeed than they had previously once the playing field is leveled and once privilege is lessened. The second thing to consider is leadership buy-in and adoption is vital to success. What happens a lot of times is company leaders say they want an inclusive culture, but when it comes time to make the necessary adjustments, they step back in favor of the status quo. Change is hard, even incremental ones. Some of the best work environments can use routine analysis to see if they are providing opportunities for everyone to participate fully and not unintentionally creating barriers to success. But for it to truly succeed and stick, the leadership team must be willing to get behind the initiative and support it fully, even when difficult decisions have to be made. Often advantages that they have enjoyed may need to go away or be shared with a wider group of participants. Leaders need to be willing to learn and show vulnerability too. We all have something we can learn from our coworkers at all levels, and true education can work in all directions. For example, the best mentorship relationships are where the mentor and the mentee teach each other rather than instruction being one way. So third, one of the most important steps is to survey all your employees. And also importantly, use an external resource to allow everyone to feel safe sharing their honest experiences. This survey should be a way to uncover areas that need to be addressed first or most. So companies should be prepared to be surprised and sometimes even shocked by how people feel in the workplace. The experience that you have may be vastly different than what others have. And there may be bullying or other negative dynamics at play that you aren't aware of. Once you get the results, prioritize the issues to be addressed, then create an action plan. Communicate what you uncovered in the survey with all employees and discuss what you will be doing to change the negative elements and enhance the positive ones. Reinforce that all opinions are valid, and the goal is to create a workplace where everyone can thrive and grow. This can be an awkward presentation, but if openness and sharing this information is going to be one way that you show and prove to those that are skeptical that you really do plan to do something with it and make improvements. After that, you should assign responsibilities, create milestones, schedule meetings for the team to report progress, any impediments, and make sure that progress is actually being made. So the fourth thing that I would recommend is require unconscious bias training for everyone in the company, starting with the leadership team. We all have biases, and often we are not aware of them and how much they impact our decisions. They happen automatically in the same part of our brain that controls our fight or flight responses. These quick judgments about people and situations are made based on our past experiences, our culture, background, exposure to media, lots of other inputs, and they can affect nearly every decision we make. Training won't make our unconscious biases change overnight, but it will make those that are in the training aware that they exist and give them the ability to pause their thoughts, try to understand where they're coming from, and identify if they are truly valid or if they're a result of unconscious bias and kind of in that fight or flight mode. So let's talk about one small practical way to allow everyone to feel included in a process that happens all the time at companies: a brainstorming meeting. Meeting dynamics and power struggles can be all over the place, from truly productive to downright toxic. Too often participants are jockeying for recognition and credit, trying to catch the eye of leadership and increase their own stock in a company. I'm sure if you haven't seen this yet, you will certainly see it at some point. So people will take credit for others' ideas, talk over each other, interrupt when others are speaking, and just so many other things happen. What doesn't happen in this type of environment is much productive brainstorming. So yet making a few small adjustments can flatten the power dynamic and generate a lot of really good ideas too. So often the loudest and highest ranking member of a team overpowers the quieter and less tenured people, meaning new ideas are squashed before they have a chance to see the light of day. So to avoid this, send a list of questions or requests to all participants prior to the meeting and ask them to submit their ideas in advance. Read all the responses without attribution, so they are considered equally by all those in the meeting, instead of those by higher ranking members being automatically given preference. You may even want to vote by ballot on the ideas to narrow down to the top 3 for discussion. Do not allow interruptions unless you own the meeting and need to stop someone from rambling. This happens too. So productive discussion should be encouraged, but putting down others' ideas because you disagree with them is not acceptable. Ask team members to share their ideas on how to make meetings more inclusive and productive, and try them out, even if they may seem a little silly to you. Just because it's never been done before doesn't mean it's not a good idea. You never know what will return some cool and pretty productive brainstorming that could just be the next great idea to take your company to the next level. So the ultimate goal is to create a workplace culture where everyone at the company feels included, safe, important, and able to be their true self at work. This doesn't mean everyone will agree on everything. We are still people after all, but it does mean that there is a level of respect and appreciation for our differences and what we each bring to the company.